That I would say was probably one of my most memorable club games of rugby, because we played against a team called Stade Francais. Their home venue was in Paris, so effectively we played them 100 meters down from their home venue, which was a home game for them. It was very difficult. Leicester had lost in a big final in 1996 in Cardiff to Brive, and there was a lot of scars from a lot of people. And I remember we had, as I said, a really tight group, a tight team that were incredibly trustful of each other, but great amount of ability in that side. And I can remember we stayed in a place called Versailles, which is outside Paris. It's a beautiful place with lots of fantastic old castles and beautiful palaces as such, and trees, and it's a very nice place. We stayed there, and on the day we bussed into the Parc des Princes, which is a very famous stadium that they don't really use for rugby anymore, but it's a natural amphitheater which holds the sound. And in this place was amazing. We bussed in and we went underneath the stadium, and I can remember being in an old oak changing room, lots of sort of individual changing seats, and it felt very grand. It felt very regal. The whole place had a sense of pomp about it, and I can remember some really experienced players in my team, or in Leicester's team, like Martin Johnson and Graham Rowntree and Neil Back, and it was probably the first time I'd seen some of those guys look really, really nervous. And when we walked out onto the pitch, there was a big standoff. The French team that we were playing against, sorry, a fly's just buzzing me. The French team that we were playing against, Stade Francais, there was a big standoff on the halfway, and we managed to antagonize the referee even before we left the tunnel. And then he
Agonize.
antagonize. So we had a tactic. We used to speak and analyze for big games. Most teams will have a look at the referee and exactly what his traits are and what he likes to penalize and the way he likes to speak and the things he likes to do. And before we played that game against Stade Francais, you get to about 4 minutes before kickoff, and generally the referee will say, "Okay, 1 minute warning," and he'll knock on the door. And with that, both teams are supposed to go out and stand in the tunnel side by side. But a lot of teams have a little bit of gamesmanship, and particularly the French, and they like to keep you waiting. So we got our knock on the door at about 3 minutes to 3 o'clock, and our team funneled out into the tunnel, and we were standing there. And at the top of the tunnel, there was a sliding doors, and you could hear the noise and almost see the noise spilling down into the tunnel. It was that electric an atmosphere. But the referee knocked on the French door and they wouldn't come out. So we were waiting and waiting, and it was sort of 10 seconds turns into
Fashionably
20
late.
seconds. Well, not so fashionably late, because all it was doing was beginning to antagonize some of the players in our team who were saying, "Why are we waiting for them? This isn't fair." And the referee was knocking and they were refusing to come out. So eventually our captain was like, "Look, I'm not waiting." And the referee said, "You must wait, Martin, you must wait." And he said, "Nah, I'm going." So we kind of disobeyed the referee and walked down onto the pitch without the opposition team. So eventually, when they did come out, they had a little bit of umbrage. They were a little bit angry with us because we left without them, but they were incredibly late. They were 2 minutes late, and they were doing it on purpose. So that just created a nice little edge. But what it did was annoy the referee. And in that game, we scored 4 tries. We won 34-30, but they kicked 9 penalties and a drop kick from a player called Diego Dominguez, who was one of the best kickers in the world. And it was an incredibly close game. We scored a try right in the last minute, and 2 minutes from the end of the game. And a teammate of mine called Tim Stimson, who practiced his kicking relentlessly. He was a great teammate, and he was the guy that we chose to. He stepped up and knocked a kick over from the sideline, which was an incredibly difficult kick, but it went straight through the middle, which put us 4 points up, put us 34-30 up, which meant that Stade couldn't kick a 3-point penalty to win the game. And they didn't. They sort of played. We won the game, and we had great celebrations in Paris, which is an amazing city. We had a boat down the Seine, which is the river which flows through the middle of Paris, and we saw all of the sights. And we had a big party for a long time. And when we got back to Leicester, we continued for a couple of days. So it was the best party I've had in a while.